So one of the things that I'm fascinated by, when I think about how I write, the idea of sitting down with my husband to get his input on my story, that actually really wouldn't work for me at all. So I'm amazed that you were able to get the story together, revise it over a period of years,
Yes.
and go through that whole process. So tell us how that worked.
First of all, we have very different skills. My husband is a thriller editor. He edited people like Robert Ludlum and James Baldwin. He is all about pace. I am all about depth. I call him shallow, and he calls me dull and boring. But I'm all about the feelings underneath the character. So we have different skills. So that was something that was already on our side. But we made a few rules. The biggest rule was either one of us had the power to veto anything without question.
Wow.
So that we could make our case. If I said, listen, I want more internal monologue. I want her to be thinking about this for 2 pages. And if he said, it's too long, with his pen, and he went, that was that.
Oh, see, that's why I couldn't do it.
Well,
to have someone telling me, no, so I'm amazed that...
Well, he'd written a novel, and I had not. I don't think I'd let him do that in my nonfiction, but I was really...
Okay.
He's a novel expert.
Yes.
But also, when he wrote some of the men chapters, and I said, look, this guy is just tootling along without any thought, he'd say, okay, put it in, or, so we were absolutely good about that. But I have to tell you, there were long periods of, he got sick for a couple of years, or for a year, and I took over the writing, and he took over the editing at a certain point. So the book it was not carefully monitored who did what when. Right. It had to take on a novel's, a unified tone at a certain point. At the first year or two, it was a fable. It had no sex scenes. It had no...
Well, that would be a loss.
It would be a loss. We were told by several editors to put in sex scenes. But...
Your sex scenes are excellent, I have to say. I mean, really, the writing is transcendent.
Well, thank you. I'm glad you feel that way. We took one out. Before we published it, we took one out at the end.
Oh, so there's one that we
There's
still one to read.
We have it on another machine.
Okay.
Richard was reading it before we handed it in to David Wilk, who published our book, and he said, this is a gratuitous scene, let's take it out. And I said, no. And he said, yep. So we cut it.
Fair enough.
Yeah, fair enough. It was okay. I actually agreed with him.
Did you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what about... well, first of all, would you do it again? Is it something...
We definitely are going to do it again. And what we're trying to figure out is whether to keep it a love story for grown-ups, which is one theme here, or to have another god, like a god of water, a god of dreams, a god of... It doesn't even have to be a real god. I'm not sure. I have an idea. We have an idea. Something we've developed before, but hasn't been taken.
Haven't taken it through.
It through. So yes, I definitely wanted. I loved doing this book more than I loved doing the nonfiction. Because yeah, I mean, it doesn't mean I'm better at it or we're better at it, but it's more fun.
Yeah, it is fun because you can tell lies. You can make things up.
It's character driven instead of fact driven.
Yes.
These other books, I have to be careful if I say 65% of all women are initiating divorce. It has to be 65% of all. I have to know that. Here I can say, whatever I want to say.
Yeah. Well, I think you're going to, excuse me for being presumptuous, but you're going to have to do both. Because this period in time, 2012, there's such a cultural shift going on that we do need to know. I mean, what you seem to have done, and I'm curious as to how you did this in your nonfiction, how did you find out what women were thinking when nobody else knew?
Well, that was the trick of those books. I'll tell you how. My first book started with an investigation of why young women, I was writing a column in Mademoiselle, and young women were writing in to say, I'm sleeping with my old boyfriend. These were young women,
letters,
newly married. So had a pile of letters. Then I look at the statistics, and it said, yes, indeed, women are having affairs. At the time, it was thought that men had affairs and women didn't. I mean, that was just the going thinking. So I put ads in the New York Review of Books, I put ads everywhere, and I spoke to women who I felt were relatable women, who weren't sleeping around, who were women torn. And I did this for 5 years. So it takes years to...
Yes, a long time.
And at the end of which I had every expert's idea on what this woman who was having affairs with. I had Otto Kernberg, the narcissist specialist. I had Bergman, the analyst who I think Woody Allen has used in his movies, who said, and all of them were saying bad women, they're not real women, they have split other triangle problem. You know, the analysts have interpretations of who we are.
Right.
The women were saying something
They were telling you
entirely
the
different.
truth.
They were telling me what they felt. Why am I not feeling so great? Why am I feeling that I am not as happy as I was told I'd be as a young wife?
So from your first book to now, to today,
Yes.
what's happening today? What's the difference that you see?
Well, huge cultural changes. For one thing, I don't think anyone would blink in hearing that women are having affairs the way men are. I think it's very clear in a culture in which there are 110 million single people, that the norm is no longer that people are married.
Right.
I mean, we are now a culture of single people.
It's in decline, yes.
And that's still a surprise, and it's a big surprise to women I speak to as a therapist or as a speaker, who, when they are newly single, think, I'm alone. No one else is like me. The world is coupled. I'm the only... It's not true.
It's not.
The world is single. Our world in America is single, and we have to figure out a way to make sure...
adapt our view
our
of
views,
ourselves,
and also to support people and stop them from thinking that everyone else is running off, you know, happily married with 2.3 kids. It's just not true.
No. And also globally it's not true. I know in Sweden there's a very high proportion of people living on their own. There was an article just recently about it.
So in fiction, in A Godsend, I have a woman who is a widow, a man who's never been married. They're in their late 40s. They're absolutely unconventional people. And they find each other and they fall in love. They're not out of our reserve thinking about who men and women are.
Right.
And that's what I think I bring to all the work. A sense of
That's
are
what's
all
inside your
unconventional. We are all feeling things we're not supposed to feel. Here's the truth. Let's cut out what people... in the first book, I had to make a choice. Am I going to listen to the experts speak about women, or am I going to hear women say what they feel? And I cut out everything... You know, it was one of those things where I was fried for it. I was called a witch on Larry King.
Really?
But I took away what was said about women who were doing this or feeling that.
So the people who didn't like that had a negative reaction.
So that women could say, in an atmosphere of acceptance, what they really felt.
Wow. Wow.
And that's what I think made that first book, instead of made it, wither monogamy or wither marriage or anything sort of official and scholarly.
So you had to gird your loins when you read reviews, when you got...
I was fried, and I was told by some really, really smart experts who were helping me, experts as writers and as thinkers. You are going to be fried. You are going to have to stand up there. I mean, I was on Christian shows, and they just said, goodbye.
Really?
Well, they didn't want to hear what women were saying.
Yeah. So there's a real thread of bravery that goes through your writing, both your fiction and your nonfiction.
I think I got used to standing in very scary waters. In the first book, my very first show was Charlie Rose, my very first one. And after that, After I was fried, after I was called a witch, after I was told that I was a bad person for representing women talking about
Truthfully.
bad things, it was all gravy after that. But it became my signature way of dealing.
Right.
Now I just listen to what women say.
Right.
I don't pay attention to what's said about them.
One question I did want to ask you is, we were talking about the cultural shifts. What do you see that's happening differently now with boys, role models for them?
I think a lot is happening different for boys. First of all, young men, I mean, let's say teenage boys and a little older, are complaining about young women in the same way young women used to complain about men.
Ooh.
They're saying these girls are commitment phobic. They will sleep with you without
Mm-hmm.
falling in love with you, which was what men, girls always felt, or let's say young women and young men. Girls are feeling as if they have to make it clear to boys, or I should say young women and young men, that they're as free as men are. And that has both good ramifications and bad ones. Mm-hmm. I think men are feeling very disempowered. Mm-hmm. And I think girls are thinking that they have more power than they do.
And do you think it's a reaction to the history that we've had? Will it settle down even further? It seems like it's a hot button.
It is a hot button. And I think one of the things that's going on is that girls are really wanting more sexual experience, just as boys always did, and wanting more time to find the right person. Mm-hmm. So you see marriage getting later and later for both genders. Mm-hmm. You see women saying, I need some space. Women never said, I need some space. That was a man's thing.
No, that would be dangerous, because previously they would have lost their house and...
Yes, or they would have lost the chance at their one chance for love.
Oh.
But they're also able, finally, women, to express their raging ambivalence about committing the way men always have been able to do that. Women were thought to be unambivalent.
Yes, you were supposed to
find
just want it.
You find a guy and you want to marry him. Mm-hmm. And so where the ambivalence came out for women was later. So suddenly they've got what they want, they're married, they've got the picket fence, and they're thinking, who told me I wanted this?
So would you say that the marriages that aren't happening now are the ones that would have happened that shouldn't have?
I don't know.
You can't say
I
that.
don't know if I can say that. All I can say is that the culture is so different, and that women are feeling more empowered because they can have more control. Men are feeling as if women have usurped some of their power, but the catch is women can't ask boys out. Girls can't ask boys out. You'd think that if the power were really equal, girls could be the first to call. They really can't.
No, they can't. But I have a college-age daughter, and I know from her that nobody asks anybody out.
No, they don't date. Don't date.
It just sort of comes together
in
this sort of mysterious way that is understood by the parties involved and probably not many others.
But studies show, and this is fascinating, that the person who decides whether it's going to be sexually exclusive, whether it's going to be an actual relationship and not hooking up, hanging out, see you later, is the man. So certain things have changed dramatically, but some of our deep
that
cultural...
still hasn't changed.
No.
How interesting.
I mean, there are studies showing that in college, even in the dorms, the co-ed dorms, the girls are cleaning and doing stuff for the guys, and they are not able to say, you and I are now exclusive, okay? It has to be up to the guy. So the old and the new are kind of colliding in a way that is interesting but difficult for both genders.
And did you find writing fiction scary in any way? Or
terrifying.
Did you?
Oh, absolutely. I'm not at heart a novelist, at this point. And
I think I want to say that I think the type of writer you are depends on what you've been doing.
Yes.
But that's in the past, and the type of writer you become really depends on what you choose to do.
Right, and I will say perfectly frankly, without hurting my book, hurting our book, it is not a character-driven book.
It smells
of the bourbon that I spilled on it in the car. It's not. It's a plot. It's got a plot.
Yes, well, it's a love story, so it has to have certain conventions.
It has the convention of the conflict, of somebody or something trying to interfere and derailing it.
Of course,
and then it becomes. Then the characters take over.
Yes.
But that, not having the facts, and that's a new thing for me, and I love it. I adore it. It's freedom.
So did you procrastinate?
This book has taken a very long time.
Yeah.
And let me tell, because for writers, I think it's interesting to know, we didn't sit down and write this thing and voila. It was a fable. It was beloved by our then agent, but not beloved by traditional publishers who said, how do we publish a fable? What is that? We don't have... So they said, make it a romance. And then another publisher said, make it a this. Have more of the God of love. Have less of the God of love. Yeah. So at that point, we came very close to publishing it. And then we both looked at each other and said, let's just put it away. So we put it away for years. And when
How many years?
Well, I think 3 or 4. And when we pulled it out again and thought of the people, the agents, that my agent had left the business, should we make this a romance? Should we make this a... We looked at each other and said, no, we're not going to do that. We like this. We would come to the end of the book and weep, both of us, all the time. Each time we read it, 1,000 times. So we liked it. We decided we're going to publish it. Along came to Richard's editor's meeting a man named David Wilk, who was an ebook publisher, and he lives near us. And we thought, perfect. Let's get it out of the drawer and get it out there.
Right.
And so we're thrilled.
Yes.
We're thrilled.
Yeah.
We don't know about sales. We don't know about anything like that, but we do know that we're just thrilled to have it out.
Yeah, wonderful. So, Dalma, you've created this original cocktail, a godsend, and you're going to tell us how you've made it.
Okay. I've made yours already with the proper ingredients, but basically it's very simple. All you do is this is a Meyer lemon, which is really very juicy and very warm, but it can be any kind of lemon or lime. About a jigger. I'm going to make it a little less because I'm going to just scarf it right down after I make it. And then, well, roughly, this is a mouthful of maple syrup, just a little. The more lemon, obviously, the more maple syrup, because this is taking the place of the sweet vermouth that you usually have in a Manhattan.
Okay.
And then
it smells delicious.
Do you like maraschino cherries?
I love them.
Oh, good.
I like actually more than one. Thank you.
So wait for me. Wait for me for our liquid lunch. And then ice. Oh, wait a minute. There's one more ingredient, and that is bitters. And this, again, is a mouthful.
Have I got bitters
You've got
already?
bitters in yours. I like a lot, bitters. But some people like 1 drop. It just makes it a little less, a little richer.
Okay. So here's to the launch of a godsend.
Thank you so much.
To Dalma and Richard.
Thank you so much. It's just so much fun being here. What do you think? More maple syrup from me. Strong.
It's strong.
Strong.
It is strong.
I'm going for more maple syrup. More minerals.
More health.
More health.
Sante.
Sante.